Welcome to the Leadership is Female podcast. Katie Woods, she is the tournament director of the NBC World Series and the marketing director for the Wichita Sports Commission. Katie and I have known each other for a lot of years in minor league baseball, and I am so excited to have you on the podcast today to share your story and your knowledge with our audience.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Katie Woods. I'm the director of marketing for the Wichita Sports Commission and then also tournament director for the NBC World Series, which has been played in Wichita since 1935.
And I really want to talk about your path to getting here. We've known each other for a lot of years, but as always, I learn a few things when I'm doing some research in these interviews. And I want to talk about how you got to where you are today, because I think there's not many of us anymore that have like a straight shot to, the final destination. There's a lot of ebbs and flows. So let's go back to when you started college. Did you envision yourself working as a baseball executive?
I didn't. I loved sports. My dad coached high school basketball when I was growing up, and then now he coaches college basketball. And so I grew up around sports. I thought that was great, but I didn't think there was a path for me to necessarily work in it. So I was one of those college students who changed my major probably 4 times. I was business law. I was, I don't even know what else. And then I was business communication, and I took a PR class and went, this is really cool. I love this part of it. Being able to kind of communicate what I'm looking at, and then did some internships through that for events. And that was when I started to get into, this is a job. Before it was sports, I did an internship for a PR firm in LA, and I got to be on the PR team for the Star Wars Celebration 4, which had, I think, 35,000 Star Wars fans from around the world converge in one place. And I got to see so many people just passionate about what they loved, celebrating that together, and then got to see the back end of like someone's making this event happen. So that was when I started to kind of like the light bulb started to go on, like, this is what I'm passionate about and want to do. And then I got an internship with the Houston Astros in their community relations department. And that was my first foray into making sports a career.
Yeah, you started off with 3 internships. So for the audience who's beginning their career and maybe feeling a little bit impatient, what do you feel like taking 3 internships did for your journey and helped you to jumpstart your career?
I think for me, it was the exposure was a huge part of it, just to kind of like learn what these industries are like, what I liked, what I didn't like, to make those connections, the networking, to go, from one event, and then someone would see me intern and say, hey, are you available to help with this other event? And then the Astros, that just seemed so cool. Like, who gets to do this? And I really loved it. I learned so much from all of the full-time staff there. And I also kind of realized that I liked it a lot, but it was more pigeonholed when you work in major league sports. I was community relations, and I did exactly community relations. And I wasn't sure what my full-time would be. And so I graduated and then did one more internship, which was the Frisco Rough Riders. So that was my first foray into minor league baseball, which I knew nothing about. I had no idea what minor league baseball was. And I loved it because I got to do everything. It was like, hey, can you help over here? Can you help with the ticketing system over here? Hey, can you help with this marketing thing? Hey, can you go throw t-shirts? Hey, just everything. And I loved that, and getting to see the whole operation and be a part of it. So that was kind of where I really fell in love with minor league baseball.
Yeah, which led to your first real full-time employer, which was the Everett Aqua Sox. Love these names in MiLB. So you stayed there for 6 years, from beginning as the community relations manager and ending as the assistant general manager. What was the highest high and the lowest low of that experience?
Yeah, so the Aqua Sox were a minor league affiliate of the Mariners, and I was from Washington. And so I'd applied for jobs, and I'd kind of had a couple offered that weren't the right fit, and there just wasn't a lot that wasn't sales. And I thought I didn't want to do full-time sales. So community relations, an hour away from my hometown, was like just meant to be. So I think for me, the low was just starting and trying to find your place. I remember, I had a boss that was turned out to be a fantastic boss, but just a serious guy, not a real complimenting, you're doing a great job. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I was still trying to figure it out and didn't necessarily have that confidence to really, or that vision of my path. And I remember I called my dad, and he's a basketball coach, so he gives great advice. And I remember calling him, probably like a month or two into the job and being like, I know what you're going to say, but can I quit? And my dad was like, no, you can't quit. And I'm like, I don't know if my boss likes me, here's all these things and I'm feeling this way. And he goes, you got to remember, it's not about you sometimes. And I was like, well, that's harsh, but true. And it was this reminder. He said, you don't know what the people above you are handling, what they're dealing with, what they're getting from their bosses, so you need to be able to step back and say, if you need something, you can go and talk to your boss about it. But you also need to remember that just because you're not getting a weekly meeting or you're not getting, the positive reinforcement you think you need, it may not be about you, and they don't realize that. And so that is something that I've carried with me my whole career. When I get frustrated, just that, okay, let's step back and see if this is really about me. And so I think that was my low. And then I really started to kind of like pick up steam and momentum and take on more and more. And my highlight from working for the Aqua Sox is we hosted the Northwest League All-Star Game in 2013. And I got to have a big role in putting that together and the operations. And I just learned so much about having great partners and what they could do. We worked with the Tulalip Casino, which was this great casino partner. The Mariners were great partners for us. And we got to create this event that was amazing for fans and for players. And it just helped me realize even more, what the potential was for us to do and for me to do in my career.
Yeah. Well, first of all, how lucky are you that you've a coach for a dad? Because you talk a lot about the importance of leaders elevating their staff and the people around them and those mentors, both men and women, in their lives. And I know that the GM in Everett was someone that was pretty influential in your life. What were some of the opportunities that he had given you during your time there that helped you to excel in your role and grow in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think throughout working in Everett for him for 7 seasons or 6 seasons, I really we learned this balance of he's the serious business guy and I was this like fun, energetic, let's do all these crazy promotions. And it ended up being this great balance because there were certain times I probably needed to be reined in. And then there were other times where he needed to be pushed to do more fun. And so we developed this great relationship. And a lot of it was he kept putting me in situations to be successful. So sending me to the winter meetings or sending me to a promo seminar, bringing in sales trainers for our staff, to give us those opportunities to network and to grow, to learn. And then one of the biggest things for me is, I had my first daughter when I was AGM there, and I had to go in and say, I'm pregnant and I don't know what that looks like in this organization because they've never had someone have, a woman have a baby. And so there was no maternity leave policy in place. And he went to bat for me and went to ownership and said, okay, what do we do? She's been here 6 years. How do we make this work for her so that she can come back and be a part of this organization? And so, I mean, that's something that was really influential in me being able to continue a career in sports.
Yeah, I love that story. And it's still surprising because your daughter is only in 2nd grade. It's not like she's 30 years old,
Yep.
So the fact that was so recent, but there hadn't been a lot of women with longevity in minor league baseball that were having babies and having a policy to support them. So that's huge for your career. And, you helped lay that groundwork and also create visibility around, as crazy as it sounds, women having babies while working in sports.
And I've had women in minor league baseball come up to me afterwards, who are really at the beginning of their career and say, I don't know if minor league baseball is for me because my team doesn't have a maternity leave policy. And I don't want to wait until I'm pregnant to find out what it would be, what it would look like. And I'm not at a position in my career where I feel I can make that ask. And so I think that's, more and more teams are setting that, which is great. But the teams that don't have it, I think it's so important to keep your staff and to know that, make them feel like they've got a long-term future with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did decide to move on from Everett to Lancaster. And this time you combined your experience into the role of director of marketing and community relations. And this was in 2015. You left after a year and a half and you took a role in marketing for 3 years, then came back. So when you got called back into sports, like, how did you get back in? How did you make that decision? Was the second time a charm? Sort of walk us through what that looked like to leave. And then, you didn't leave for a couple of months, you left for 3 years and had this big set of experiences and then returned to the team.
Yeah, for me, it was, I think I just got burnt out, that minor league baseball, small staff hustle, work so hard every night, every weekend. And I hadn't gotten to the point where I realized that I could say no sometimes, or that I could ask for help, or that there could be a balance. And I just burnt out. And so there was an opportunity for my husband to move to Dallas for work. And I went, great, this is the time, let's do it. And went and had my second daughter, and then was working for a marketing consultant firm, basically, where I was a virtual assistant, and I got to have, I think I had 4 different clients. And it was so great for me because I got to get out of the industry and look at things from a totally different perspective. And I worked with a lot of other virtual assistants who were really, really talented, like email marketing or SEO or PR. And I learned so much from them and all these things that I'm like, if I was back in baseball, I would do this. I would take this with me. The things that they were talking about with email segmentation was so different than what teams were doing, where it was like, just blast out as much as possible to as many people as possible over and over and over again. And so I was just like, oh, this makes so much sense. And so having that break and really learning from them was huge. And then the GM for the Jethawks left. And so my boss from the Aqua Sox was now the president or the vice president in Lancaster. And so I reached out and I said, you have an opening, I want it. How do we make this happen? And so I went back as the AGM, and it was great. Like, I think just combining the experience I'd had, that kind of break to refresh myself and my passion for baseball, and then this new experience, I just felt like it was just the right time and the right staff, and it was great.
Yeah. And then, following that return, you had a really good run there where you onboarded some really important programming, including COPA. I know you and I, that's sort of how we got to know each other, exchanging emails about that program. But, a couple years later, there was a contraction in minor league baseball, and Lancaster was one of those teams, and you had to uproot yourself and re-examine your future. What was that like to be? I was a part of it in that I was in minor league baseball at the time and feeling these waves of emotion from all of these teams, and seeing sort of the league contract and not knowing what that meant for the future of my friends and where they were going to go, and the league. And anyway, what was it like to be in it and to be, leading one of those teams that was not carried forward into the future?
Yeah, it was just such an interesting, we had this amazing 2019. I think our attendance went up 11%. We started the COPA program every Friday night and had awesome success with that. I think it was like 30% attendance growth on Fridays. We just felt like we had all these programs, we had all this momentum, things were going to be great. And then in the fall of 19, there was this list that came out of, here's these teams that are up for potential contraction. So we knew, but then it was, hey, we really think, we've got all this great stuff going, we'll be able to kind of push through. And then the pandemic hit, and everything changed for everybody. And that, fell so far off people's priority list, and just awareness of what was happening. And I think the hardest thing from the team side was we didn't get to have that farewell season and that opportunity for the community to celebrate and to really kind of just celebrate Jethawks baseball, for one more year and give people that opportunity for closure. And so we were, I like to say we were team 121. So there ended up being 120 teams in, but when they announced the list, they announced 119. And then it was going to be either Lancaster or Fresno. because they still hadn't figured out what was happening with Fresno, their city, the lease, all kinds of things. And so we waited a couple more days, knowing that Fresno was probably going to be team 120, but not sure. And it was just a really, that roller coaster of emotions, like you talked about, for us. And then it was this kind of re-examining for me, like my whole career is baseball, minor league baseball. We moved to Lancaster for minor league baseball. We bought a house, we're settled, we're good to go. Now we got to start over. And so, do I want to move for minor league baseball? Do I want to try something different? But I knew, baseball and sports is what I'm passionate about. So then it was interviewing with teams and finding out, where the opportunities were. And I ended up in Wichita, Kansas, a city I had never been to until the day before I started my job.
Oh, Katie, I have to take a second to just recognize all that you said there and all that you went through in your career. And this wasn't early in your career. You've had years and years of experience working and had the rug pulled out from under you in Lancaster. And you thought you were in your dream job and it ended. And the lesson I really want to reiterate here is that this was a probably really hard, dark time for you in your career, but look where you are today and just a very short time later. And so for all of our listeners, it might feel like the darkest day of your career, but there truly is the next. And, for Katie, you found that in Wichita and now where you are today, which we're going to talk about. But before we move on to your role as tournament director and how historic that is, a little bit more on Wichita and some of the circumstances surrounding the team and what happened when you landed there and the pandemic and minor league baseball. Wichita was supposed to be in AAA baseball, and with their move from New Orleans, they were originally part of the Pacific Coast League. So I attended so many meetings with these guys and the excitement around the ballpark opening in Wichita. I'll never forget Lou standing in front of the room, just literally jumping out of his shoes, telling us that it was going to be the greatest ballpark in all the land. It was contagious, how excited he was about that project and about that team and the new beginnings and the success that was going to be in the future. And the pandemic hit, and it also brought devastation. Lou passed away, and it was just so sad. His family was tied up in the team. We lost Lou during COVID, and then the next year the ballpark had to reopen after the death of the owner, recovering from a pandemic, opening in a new city. Katie, tell me a little bit about what that was like, being a part of the team after all of these things transpired.
I started in March of 21, and they had an exhibition game in April. I think I started like a month before this exhibition game, and it was just such an interesting situation to come into. That Lou was the reason there was baseball in Wichita. Lou had all these dreams and all this vision, and I never worked with Lou, but you got there and he never got to see a game. He never got to see that vision. And so there was very much, especially from the staff who had worked with him and had helped build it, was we're doing this for Lou and we're going to fulfill this vision the best we can. And then you had, people like me coming in late, trying to pull wherever we could pull. We had staff that had left. There was just kind of all this transition. And then I remember the day before tickets went on sale for the exhibition game, we got approval to go from, I think it was going to be like 30% capacity to 95% capacity the day before tickets went on sale. So we ended up running the first event in the ballpark a month after that with, 7,000 people in the stadium that had never been, there was no soft open, there was no trial run, it was just go. And, one of the things I love about minor league baseball is you make so many friends through the fire, that kind of, you make those connections of people that you just put your head down and go, we are going to make this happen come hell or high water. And that's what we did. And it was pretty amazing to be a part of that.
I can only imagine what it was like to open those gates and honor the man that brought the team there and celebrate sort of the end of the pandemic, at least,
Mhm.
you know, in terms of outdoor sports and inviting
Mhm.
people to come back together. Oh boy, what a roller coaster ride that must have been. And I think about Lou whenever I think about minor league baseball, and whenever I get the chance to work, you know, or be back in those ballparks, I hope to embody his spirit and his excitement for the game. He's a old school dude that brought a new school energy.
Mhm.
So you left Wichita, and Wichita, the storm surge or the wind surge. I don't know why I always call them storm surge. You maybe should tell us the naming story. But you left Wichita, and now you're the tournament director for the National Baseball Congress World Series, making you the first woman to hold that role in the tournament's 88 years of existence. So first of all, congratulations. Let's hear it for the Glass Ceiling Breakers. I'm so honored and happy and excited for you to have that role and represent women in that way. And your responsibility is to bring that tournament to a new level, to a new life. So did you feel any sense of intimidation with the byline first woman in that role? And what attracted you to the role in the first place?
I mean, it's definitely something that's talked about, but I didn't feel any intimidation. It's just sometimes you kind of go, okay, how are other people going to receive this? Right? What's the pushback, or is there going to be buy-in because of that? But I knew I could do the job. It was really a great opportunity for me because it fits so much of what I already did and what I was passionate about, but it was also all these kind of new challenges and things I hadn't done before, but I knew were within my reach. So my responsibilities are everything from recruiting teams and leagues to affiliate with the NBC from across the country, to recruiting umpires, making sure we have the scorekeeping, all these things between the lines that I had never really had to do before. But then also making it a Wichita event and getting fans in the ballpark and working with ticketing and working with our venue, rebranding this year. I mean, it's really been everything, okay, all the way around. And so it's been a really, really fun challenge.
Yeah, you're in some ways starting from scratch, but preserving the legacy of this historic baseball tournament. You told me a cool story about its origin before we hit record. Will you talk to the audience about how this whole thing started?
Yeah, so in 1935, Hap Dumont started the NBC World Series, and the first World Series, he got Satchel Paige to come out and play, and paid him $1,000. But the story is that he didn't have the $1,000. He had to get enough people to come out and then and make it this event. And so while the focus was baseball, it was really promotion and marketing from the start. And he got enough people to come out and paid him his $1,000. And there's this history now of the NBC of it's always been baseball. I think there's something like 800 former or 800 major leaguers played in the NBC or in an NBC affiliated league. And you have all these famous players from across eras. I actually went to ABCA in Nashville, the American Baseball Coaches Association conference in January. And I had so many people that just stopped by and said, I played in 1996. I was with the Clarinda A's. I mean, just everyone has these connections and stories to the NBC because it's been around so long. So it's been really fun to examine that baseball history. But like you said, really kind of reinvent it for 2023 and moving forward.
Yeah, it's a huge project to take on and a huge role. How much do you think your self-confidence played into you winning this role?
I think there was definitely part of it because I said, this is the role for me. And I went to our president before this was my role and said, I think that I can do this. And here's all the reasons I think, and here's what where we need to go, and I see the vision. And so being able to have the confidence to go say that and ask, and worst case, he was going to say no, and that's fine. But to be at that point where I can and verbalize, this is what I want, and this is why it would be great, and this is why I can make this great for Wichita, I think really played into it.
Yeah, earlier in the interview, you said sometimes it's not about you. And that's advice that's kind of stuck with you, along with it's not personal.
Mhm.
So potentially having that in your back pocket, like, I'm going to pitch myself. If this doesn't work out, it's not personal. Maybe it's not about me. What are your thoughts around that mindset, and how do you, it's difficult to maintain. How do you maintain that mindset?
I think I always used to think from when I started, I'm not good at sales because I didn't want to pick up the phone and make 50 calls a day. And I realized I'm actually great at sales when it's something that I believe in, but I don't like transactional sales. I want it to be relationship based. And so for me to know and have that confidence of I believe in the product makes it where I have the confidence to, if they say no, that's okay, but I believe in what I'm pitching and what I'm selling. And whether that's myself or whether that's a community program or whether that's, marketing, it's that belief in what I'm doing. And I think it's been throughout my career, but later in my career, that I've really kind of had that confidence to say, I have to believe in how we treat people, what we're doing, what our vision is, because that's what's going to make me good at my job. If we're not in that place, then I can't pitch it. I can't be a part of it. And that's really helped me, I think, be better, both just as a worker and also as a leader too.
Yeah. And earlier in our conversation, you talked about how in minor league baseball, that was your roots, and you get to do it all. You get to sort of work in a lot of different areas, learn a lot about the business, and that helped you to develop this willingness to get it done.
Mhm.
So do you think it's something you were born with, or do you think it was honed through your experiences? Obviously, that's helped you to secure this role and now, get the job done with the list of things you said are on your plate to accomplish before this August tournament.
I think it's a little bit of both, but I really think growing up around that coach's mentality, I really want to be proud of what the product I put out, what I put out on the field or in our events. And I grew up watching my dad, I helped do laundry for the teams, and we would host teams for the Super Bowl party, and we would do all these kind of extra things because that's just what you do, and I think that's something that's probably born with a little bit, but you just kind of go, I want to be proud of what I'm putting out there. I want it to be something where I can say I gave my all. And so that's what I go into every event thinking.
Yeah. And I think you attract what you are. So these roles have been a natural fit for you because of the person that you are and your willingness to get it done. And one of the things that you're also fantastic at is networking and asking for help or shared expertise. Can you tell us about how that's benefited your career?
Mm-hmm. I love that kind of idea of there's always somebody that's going to be better at something than you, and there's always somebody that's going to be smarter than you, and not taking that as again, it's not about me, right? So that's not saying anything about me. It's that these people are so good at what they do. And so when I was at a place in my career earlier on, I would reach out to teams that were doing really cool things and just ask, like, how are you doing this? How are you making this event happen? Why does your website look so great? How did you make this page? Or just to compliment people and say, I love the social media that you guys are doing. Like, it's funny and engaging and awesome. And I made so many good connections that way with people. People want to be asked, about their expertise. They want to be able to share that expertise. And so I think that's a huge thing when it comes to networking, is just being genuine about it.
Yeah. What does that look like for you today? Now that you're in a bit of a new arena, how do you establish that network and find those people to lean on for best practices or assistance?
I think coming into it, a lot of it is just being willing to say, I don't know. There's people who've been around the NBC for 30 years. And so whether that's managers or whether that's fans or partners, and for me to say, well, tell me about that. What did that look like for you? What do you think the NBC needs to bring back? What do you think I never need to bring back ever again? And to get that expertise, because they have it and I don't. And then I still have so many great minor league baseball connections or people who were in minor league baseball where I can say, hey, who's that shirt vendor? Because I haven't done a lot with merchandise. Who did you use for that? Or tell me then how you did that promotion, and be able to bring those pieces in.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, aside from tackling huge career goals, you have two young girls. What logistics play into working major events and raising your daughters? And do you have any advice that you can share on the topic of having a very full life?
Yeah, I think for me, a couple things. One is I really had to come to that realization that I have to be okay with whatever's best for me and whatever works for me, because you'll have some people who, question those decisions about where you're spending your time. And I just had to know what was right for me. And another huge part for me is having the right partner. My husband is a fantastic supporter of me in everything I do. And he, during baseball season, is the primary parent. He's the one that's picking up and dropping off and dealing with sick kids and making sure they are where they need to be, and making dinner and doing all that. And he does all of that because that's part of the partnership, right? And so that's so important. And then Jenna Burns from Oklahoma City, when I asked her once, okay, how do you do this? Like logistically, parenting, all of this. And I just remember she said, it takes a village, and sometimes you're going to pay for your village. And so I loved that, because sometimes it's, there's friends and there's family and there's all these things. And then sometimes it's like, I'm just going to have to pay extra for the after school care, or I'm going to have a babysitter, or I'm going to have to pay someone to come in and clean once a month or once a week so that my, husband doesn't go crazy during baseball season while I'm doing all this. And so it's just about making it work and what works best for you.
Oh, I love Jenna. She's such a straight shooter. That is absolutely something she would say. And I think she said similar to me, and it took off this pressure, right? Because I'm like, all right, work, kids, oh, my house needs to be cleaned. I have to buy all the groceries. I have to do all these things, divide myself in half to be in two places at once. And it's okay to pay for help, right? Like at the end of the day, you're spending all this time at work to earn money, and you're choosing to spend your time there. So you're going to have to use some of those resources to support those other areas of your life. And I don't know, maybe it's part like the way we were raised with our moms and, the examples they set, but the modern woman, you could just Venmo some people and get that shit done.
Get those groceries delivered. That's okay sometimes.
Exactly. All right. So you chose to stay in Wichita.
Mm-hmm.
You're not from there. It's a whole new spot on the map for you and your family. Why did you choose to stay? What do you love about that city? Enlighten us about Wichita, Kansas.
The first thing was the people. I made such good friends and such good connections kind of right off the bat. Like I just felt like I had a support system from the start in Wichita. And then it's just this great small big city. I think it's I'm going to get this wrong, 49th or 50th largest city in the country, but it has such a small town feel. And that just means that there's so many resources that feel like they're within reach. If I want to set up a meeting with somebody, a CEO, I can make that connection. There's these great business groups and great innovation, and Wichita State has a fantastic college campus and tons of innovation going on through that. And it just felt like this place where I could succeed, and where I would have this support to do things like take this NBC tournament and run with it, and have a big support system behind me from the community, because Wichita is really proud of Wichita, and it's fun to be a part of it.
That's cool. Well, we got to ask about the food too. What's the cuisine like?
So much good food. I really wasn't sure. To be honest, I've never been here before, and I had no idea. And there's so many great local restaurants. And it's also this very walkable, like where we live, I can walk to a coffee shop, I can walk to a sports bar, I can walk to a wine bar, I can walk to a French restaurant. Like there's all these things in Wichita, but a lot of great local food.
Oh, sounds fantastic.
It is.
Do you work for the sports commission there? I'm just,
Yeah, well, I was saying to somebody, I was like the Pied Piper of Wichita after I moved
Yeah.
here. Like, did you know there's the seventh largest zoo in the country is in Wichita? And have you seen the botanical gardens? I mean, like, there's just so much stuff, and I think I didn't expect it coming in, and so it's been fantastic.
Oh, I love that. It's great when you find the right place for you and for your family. And that's awesome. Okay, so final 4 questions. 1 hard hitter, 3 softballs. What is your top piece of advice for women to apply today to level up tomorrow?
I think it's the don't be afraid to ask for help, but don't be afraid to go for it. I always thought you had to have 100% of the experience before you applied for a job. And so I'd see these things and go, oh, I don't know if I have strong enough sales experience, or I don't know if and I just ignored all the things that I brought to the table that weren't on that list. And so I think don't wait, just go for it. The worst they can say is no, but you're going to learn through that process. And so I think that's the biggest thing.
Where are you traveling to next?
I'm going to Los Angeles next, which I'm excited to go back to LA. I always love a little sun and beach, and I'm not going to see Dodgers baseball this time, but anytime I can get back to LA, I love it.
What is your walk-up song?
Here Comes the Hot Stepper is my walk-up song.
All right. I haven't heard that one yet on here.
It's like a good 90s classic, upbeat and fun, and it just makes you wanna dance or hit a home run.
It's playing in my head currently. And finally, what is your favorite quote?
So I love the quote. It's a little long, so into the hole, but from Hunter S. Thompson, where it says, "Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely, but rather skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, proclaiming what a ride." And I think about that a lot with baseball and sports, and I love doing what I do and being passionate and just doing amazing events with fun people. And if I'm excited about it and passionate about it, then I think that translates to everybody.
Oh, well, it's been such a pleasure catching up with you today on the Leadership is Female podcast. And I'm just so happy for you and where you've landed, breaking glass ceilings and creating a beautiful life for you and your family in Wichita. Katie Woods, everybody.
Thanks.